This is Mark with Acquiring Christianity. My name is Mark, and I'd like to talk about the Watchmaker Theory and why it works. Because the Watchmaker Theory always comes down to, if you find a watch, it's ideological rather than empirical. But it makes sense. If you find a watch somewhere, you say, well, did this watch just appear? And you say, well, no, somebody made this. It's too complicated to find a watch that just came together like that. And the theory is, if a watch can just just be there, that with that amount of accuracy, and it keeps time down to the minute, down to the second, whatever, it keeps time, that's beyond belief. It's beyond what is reasonable to assume. And we must make assumptions at some point, The evolutionists make assumptions that nothing exploded, but it wasn't. That's what Richard Dawkins said. Nothing exploded, but it wasn't nothing. And okay, but let's say nothing exploded, and then the gravitational forces created the stars and the sun and the moon and the Earth. Let's just say that all happened, and then lightning struck water, and rather than doing what lightning does, is it destroys this particular time, it made life. And there was a molecule, this is what they say, a molecule attached to the molecule, and that was eating, and then it let go of other molecules from a chain reaction, and that was excreting. And then that evolved into life with the genetics and all this stuff. It's unbelievable that all this stuff happened by accident. Say, well, it's not like the watch theory. We have certain forces in the universe that help create life. Certain things react certain ways. Like if you pour vinegar over baking soda, it will react, and there will be a chemical reaction, and it's all by natural processes. It's all by natural processes. There's no rhyme or reason to it. You could ask a question then, why are atheists so determined to push atheism? And they say because it's logical. Well, people have used logic and result, and because Christianity is evolutionary, that we just choose Christianity or we just choose atheism, as Bro Justin called, or as Lucas Labrador X called, the science religion. I believe all this stuff happened. Very complicated, very rare this would happen. 1 in a trillion, billion, whatever, chance that it would happen, but it did happen. The proof is that we're here. But the question is, okay, where did time come from? And I can prove in another video, we have finite time. I have proven we have finite time. Time is finite. That means it has a beginning and it has an end. What caused time to have that? If it has a beginning and an end, then our lives down here are temporal. Unless something happens, all this will end. And we talk about the global warming and the global climate change and how we need to do something about it. How do we know we'll even be here? And how can we believe as scientists? Because a lot of people will say, well, you can believe in Moses, but I believe in scientists. And they can say, I believe in science, but, as far as, except for a few experiments. I made a motor, and I made an electric motor when I was a kid. And, that's repeatable, and I did repeat it. And we can pour vinegar over baking soda, but basically science, what we call science, is true, but we don't do the experiments for the most part. Scientists do the experiments. So somebody say, well, you believe in Moses, you believe in this book, that takes faith. But then if you say a scientist said this, therefore it's true, like global warming or like you have to wear a mask for the for the coronavirus, or you have to get a vaccine or you'll spread the virus, which we found out politically that the vaccine for the coronavirus, for coronavirus 19 or COVID-19, doesn't prevent the disease. We found out. We were told it was like 100% chance it will prevent the disease, and they said 99% chance. And then they just said, well, keep you from spreading it. And we find out it doesn't keep you from spreading it. They never found any evidence that keeps it from being spread. So we end up being trusting people, which is the same thing in the Bible. Somebody wrote the Bible. If we say a person wrote it, then we're trusting the person that wrote it. Whether we say that's God, or we say that's man, or we say that's man and God, or humanity and God, it could have been Esther wrote the book of Esther. We don't know, so it could have been a woman, which is fine as far as I'm concerned. But we trust scientists, and not just science. We can see science works, but when it comes to big questions like, were there dinosaurs? Were we evolved from apes? Scientists put something out against the Bible. We're supposed to believe the scientists rather than believe Moses and Joshua and Jesus and all this stuff, or Matthew, Mark, all these people that wrote the scriptures that interlock. We're also supposed to believe that the Bible has no science to it, that archaeology has not been done. Archaeology has proven nothing about the Bible. In fact, there were bricks in Egypt that were made without straw, and back then, in that locale in Egypt, you really they really didn't have the technology to make bricks without straw. So Pharaoh supposedly said in the Bible, I say supposedly, that they have to find their own. The Jews had to find their own straw. The children of Israel had to find their own straw, and they find bricks made without straw because the straw will decompose, but it'll leave holes where the straw was in the bricks. And there were bricks without straw in one of the storage cities, I think, in Egypt. And so, okay, that's archaeology. Well, that doesn't prove anything, but it implies something. And we see writing with Pontius Pilate's name on it. We found I think so a lintel or something like that with Pontius Pilate's name on it. But the thing is, when you believe in science, when you believe the scientists, and when you believe the atheists, they have to assume something. They can't assume that everything came from something outside of time. There was an explosion, but the explosion didn't happen in time. You have to believe that. I mean, if you believe what Dr. Dawkins says, you have to believe that there was something that was really nothing. There was nothing there and it exploded, but that nothing was not really nothing. And if you accept the second law of thermodynamics, matter can neither be created nor destroyed, but just changes form, then something divine or supernatural had to happen for matter to exist at all. If nothing exploded and created matter, then it was created. And how was it created? If time is limited, then it must have happened at the beginning of time or after the beginning of time. Nothing exploded, and that nothing really wasn't nothing. You have to believe this stuff. The Watchmaker understanding the Watchmaker Theory is that something is too complicated to have come from, just dirt. You don't find a watch with the hands and I got a watch with a hand. It's got a minute hand. It's got a second hand. It's got a hour hand. Has a second hand, hour hand, and a minute hand. And that didn't just come about. That's not reasonable to think that a watch just appeared that way. Just especially if you find more than one watch, that they all just happen to appear that way, and no intelligent designer. It's the same thing with time. If time exists, and it does, I think scientists will agree on that. It's hard to nail these people down. It's like nailing Jello to the wall. Where did the nuclear force come from? Where did the strong and the weak nuclear force come from? Where did gravity come from that all this might be made possible? It takes, as it's been said, it takes a greater amount of faith to believe these scientists' theories that they have not proven, such as the theory of evolution. It's not proven because you can't repeat it. They've tried to repeat it over and over again. The scientific method says you do something and then you repeat it and you say, okay, you repeat it and you say the proof is that I can do it again. So the theory of evolution is not based on science. But what I'm saying is, if we say, and I studied this in biology of the cell when I was getting after I finished my requirements for my biology minor, they say there's, in your muscles, your muscles work based on ionized potassium, which is why it's called potassium. It's related to the word in Latin, which means power. You have potassium in your muscles, so I can do this. I can move my muscles. I can tense my muscles up or tense my muscles up the other way, one way or the other way, because they're opposing tendons and ligaments. And the positively charged ionic potassium makes me be able to contract my muscles because it's a chemical that because it's ionized, it can make the muscles contract. And I can do that based on what I want to do, using my nervous system. But where did the positive potassium ions come from? Where did potassium come from? Where did nothing that exploded come from? It always goes back to the Watchmaker Theory. It is unreasonable to think that all this happened by accident. And it's unreasonable to think that the processes and the ability for anything to exist doesn't come from a God. It is logical, it is reasonable, it is rational to believe that God created everything. Because whatever you believe and whatever your tenets are, and many atheists, many people that call themselves atheists are really Satanists. They're just trying to throw a monkey wrench into the Christian belief system. And many people who call themselves Christians are really Satanists. I've seen that before. One of my elders at church talked about the all-seeing eye. Well, that's Horus and Satanism. It's based on pagan Egyptology and based upon the Egyptian religion, and which became part of Masonry. The all-seeing eye, called the eye of providence, when they used it back in the Middle Ages to not assert paganism. Where did all this stuff come from? Where did we get matter at all? If matter can neither be created nor destroyed, but just changes form according to the second law of thermodynamics, because that's about thermodynamics. That's how heat works. Thermos, meaning heat in Greek, or thermos. I don't know how it's pronounced. Thermos. You cannot say, well, okay, the natural world is not subject to the Watchmaker Theory, because it is. Okay, God bless. I hope that was informative. I wish that was informative. And think before you assert certain things. Have logic. Without time, nothing would happen. Either that or without. If you put in the equation, speed equals change in distance over change in time, and you put infinite amount of time, or you put no time, no time, everything would happen. But in the equation, it would blow the equation up. It would be undefined. If you put zero, change in distance over change in speed. If you put time, change in distance over change in time. If you put time to zero, nothing happens theoretically. Just as reducing time means you reduce what you get accomplished, everything else being equal. But if you reduce it to zero, if you put time as infinite, then nothing really happens because there's nothing but time. If you put everything at infinity, then you have absolute chaos because everything's happening at once and it will go on forever. Okay, God bless.